What was your almost Darwin Award moment? My stepdad was drilling a peephole into the front door. Then he walked outside, I assumed to the garage or something, so I put my eye up to the hole to see if I could see out there. It was all dark, nothing to see. Just as I pulled my head back away from the door, a spinning drill bit comes poking through the hole. And that was how Finn Sulfur almost became Odin. I was removing the dash from an old Honda Prelude I used to own. Parked it in the garage and I had to do most of it while sitting in the front seat. As I'm almost done, I have to remove the plastic around the gear shift and needed to put it in neutral to wiggle the piece off. It comes off and I sit it down on the garage floor. As I step out, I accidentally kick the plastic piece further under the car and have to reach pretty far under to get it. At the exact moment that I almost have my head under the car looking for the piece, I realize that I still have the car in neutral and it's starting to roll backwards. I jump up, dive in the front seat, and throw it back into park. Both doors were open too, so after it rolled over my body it would have ripped the doors off and damaged the wall while rolling out of the garage. I like the concern you have for the doors and wall. I bombed a huge hill on my grandmother's driveway on my tricycle when I was like 5 or something. At the bottom of this hill is a little bridge, then it opens out into the public street. Luckily my dad was at the bottom of the hill just past the bridge, right before the street, talking to people, and he saw my flying down as I hit the bridge. He scooped me right out of the seat as the tricycle went by. Trike went into the street and was subsequently destroyed by a passing car. Yup, thanks, Dad. My dad was doing some electrical work when he started screaming my name and convulsing. I panicked and tried to pull him away from the open wires when he started scolding me instead. Turns out it was fake and he was trying to teach me a lesson. He told me if someone is ever being electrocuted, you do not touch them but find something that doesn't conduct electricity to move them away. If he was actually being electrocuted, I would have been killed too because I didn't know. He could have taught me that lesson without scaring the crap out of me, though. He did the same thing to my brother a few years later. Coming home from the bar exam on a NJ transit train, a window was open when it shouldn't have been. So, I stuck my hand out of it and it felt funny. So then I thought, what if I stick my head out of the window within a split second before I could do it? The train passed by a building within inches. If my head was out at that point, it would have come off clean. I balanced a nickel on the tip of a .22 rifle pointed straight up and pulled the trigger so I could have a nickel with a hole in the middle to make a cool necklace. When I retrieved the nickel, the bullet landed mere steps from my location. Nickels make excellent targets, but next time put it on the berm and do it properly. I stabbed my foot and almost castrated myself in a changing room. Somehow my pocket knife opened in my pocket when I took off my pants. When I put them back on, it felt like someone hit the top of my foot with a hammer. I started to check my pockets and discovered my pocket knife sticking through my pants with the point about an inch from my crotch. I then looked at my foot and realized my sock was turning red. Slipped my shoes on, got out of the store and checked my foot in the car. Saw tendons, went and got 9 stitches. You weren't joking. That sounds awful. My best childhood friend and I used to like making potions. Basically, we'd mix together all the cosmetic and household cleaning products we could find in a big bowl. One time we used Drano. It's a miracle we never managed to mix bleach and ammonia. I would do this, too. I'd always put Alka-Seltzer in them to make them fizz. I pretended I was a chemist, though, not a wizard. Even as a child, I was boring. My Darwin Award moment was climbing a fence in an attempt to get a burrito on the other side. Unbeknownst to me that the fence had barbed spikes on top. I now have a scar, a slightly less useful hand, lost my chance of being a musician, and didn't even get the burrito. My friend has a similar story, but was wearing basketball shorts and now has a torn ball sack. Friend and I cobbled together a ramshackle homemade shotgun made out of thin pipe and used shells we tore apart for gunpowder and shot. It all worked fine for a while until we decided to increase the power, and it blew up on us. No one was hurt because we deployed the proper safety equipment, winter clothing and hats, and scarves. We stopped our amateur gunsmithing after that. Hats are renowned for their bullet stopping ability. I was about 14 years old. On a cold and wet rainy Michigan late winter day, my mom said she was cold and wanted me to start a fire in the wood stove. I went out to get some wood. All of it was totally soaked. Okay, what to do? Let's see. What burns really well? I know. Gasoline. Loaded up the wood stove with wood and poured a bit of gas on. Lit a match. Brought it close and home. Instant fire. You would have thought that the concussion of the ignition would have made me stop and think, gee, maybe this isn't a good idea. But you'd be wrong. The gas burned off pretty fast and the fire started to go out. I put some gas in a small cup and commenced to pour liquid gas on directly onto a fire. Well, the fire immediately went up the pouring liquid and right into the cup. At this point you might believe I couldn't possibly do anything more stupid. But don't sell me short. I panicked, meaning my brain stopped thinking and all movements became reactive. And instead of just dropping the cup in the fire, in the wood stove, I pulled it out and started to shake a cup full of burning gasoline. I guess my adult teenage brain thought shaking it like a lit match would put it out. It did not. Instead, I spread the fire over everything. The stove was on fire. The carpet was on fire. I was on fire. My mom rushed over and threw a blanket on me, putting me out. Thanks, Mom. We both then commenced putting out the rest of the fire. The resulting damage was a bunch of melted carpet spots and some minor first-degree burns on my arm. Well, even if a 14-year-old knew more about gasoline and fire, they'd probably still do dumb crap. Source: was 14 and knew better. When I was like 10, I was eating dinner with my family and bitching about having to eat Brussels sprouts. I hate the suckers. To this day, I wasn't allowed to get up until I had eaten at least one. So me, in all of my 10-year-old brilliance, decide to try to swallow one whole so I didn't have to bite down and taste the skunky bull juice that lurked inside. Well, I quickly learned the laws of geometry when the slimy green baby cabbage was lodged in my throat and not going anywhere. I start choking and pointing at my throat. My parents, assuming I'm just being a little chode, tell me to knock it off and finish my dinner. So, in an effort to not freaking die, I punch myself in the diaphragm multiple times until the nasty little crap comes flying out of my mouth on the floor. TLDR. Tried to eat a Brussels sprout whole and almost choked to death. Not sure if it counts as Darwin Award if it wasn't a hold my beer moment, but as a toddler I ran full force into a swinging glass door expecting to open it with my outstretched arms. Yeah, the door was too heavy and I went right through. Freaked the babysitter out for good. Blood everywhere, me in shock screaming around. Yup, that counts. Driving and thought to myself, what if I stuck my arms in the wheel? Please don't do this. I drove up onto a curb this way. 1998 in Montreal, there was a massive ice storm that cut power lines for weeks. I'm 8 and I don't have school for practically another month after Christmas. One morning I try and de-ice the couple inches of ice on my parents' car. We have an inclined driveway that goes toward our house. There are 2 huge trees bending over the driveway covered with a ton of ice and I try to grab a branch. I barely pull on it and the whole tree breaks in half and comes crashing onto the car. Branches get caught in wires and pull a bunch of bricks from the house. By some freaking miracle I just fell to the ground and slide in the driveway toward the house unharmed. The car is a pancake. There is a hole in the house and I'm just a feet away from this pile of metal, wood and bricks. Not really me, but I was almost a Darwin by Association Award winner. We were filming a stupid video about World War II for extra credit in high school and this of course culminated in a bonfire in the backyard. We had been using a Canovax to create flamethrower special effect on army men. Some real Spielberg stuff. And as we are standing around the fire, my friend just casually tosses the can in. There's an oh crap moment and we all sprint to different corners of the yard. We're hiding behind trees and stuff, waiting for it to go. I've got the camera recording the whole thing. After about 45 seconds of extreme anticipation, nothing. Okay, maybe it's not going to blow. Bomb. The windows on the house shook and birds flew out of the trees. The shrapnel from the can flew right by our heads. Easily could have been a Final Destination moment. I was at the state fair back when I was 8 or 9 at the BB gun range. After it ran out of ammo I looked down the barrel to see if any more were in it. Dad quickly pulled it away from me and then I realized I was a dumbass for doing that. burning brush for the first time by myself in the woods of the first house I bought. My dad must have told me every time we had a fire growing up not to pour gas on the fire once it's lit, only prior to help light it. He must have told me 100 plus times that the fire can travel up the stream of gas and into the gas can itself. Well, I was too smart for that. You know, having bought my own house and having my own rules. So I poured gas directly onto the fire to make the fire bigger. Immediately the fire traced up the flow of gas and was burning at the nozzle. Fearing for my life, I threw the gas can as far as I could, which forced the gas out of the nozzle as it spun through the air, throwing streams of fire all over the forest floor. 3 hours, 3 fire truck and half a dozen firefighters later, I finally learned the lesson my father had been trying to teach me for 20 plus years. Sometimes you just have to do dumb crap yourself. I was young and there was a, what I assumed empty, lever action .22 in my friend's dad's pickup, and I've been around guns plenty of times so it wasn't of any concern really. So I start fiddling around with the rifle and dong it back and know the proper way to release the hammer, but I'm young and dumb and decide to pull the trigger. Well, it wasn't empty and it shot a hole straight through the pickup floor. Moments before this I was looking down the barrel and had one of those LOL I should pull the trigger moments for some odd reason. 12 years later I'm sure glad I used a little tiny bit of sense. You forgot the first rule of guns. Thought it would be fun to shoot a wasp nest with a BB gun. Was not fun. I looked like Quasimodo for 2 weeks after that. That's what raid, kills on contact, flying insects is for. Not me, but when my boyfriend and all of his friends from the country were in high school, they would play baseball with a 2x4 with nails in it as the bat and beer bottles as the balls. I both thanked God that he survived and cursed God that he made me love an idiot. I almost drowned and or froze to death. I got really drunk while camping near a reservoir. When it is full, the reservoir has an island in the middle of it. The water level at the time was low enough to walk out to the island. I was unaware that the dam releases water at night and hung out alone on the island drinking whiskey and smoking Black and Milds. My friends went to bed and I couldn't convince them to go out there with me. So after a few hours, I started to head back and I realized that the route I took was underwater. I kept walking along the water line, up and down slowly, freaking out at the rising water level. I finally realized I needed to cross or stay cold on the island all night. So I found a shallow area and crossed in the cold water. Mind you, it was snowing. The water came up to my chest and was cold as ice. My friends woke up around that same time and went looking for me. They found me making my way out of the water shivering with whiskey bottle in hand. Should have said empty whiskey bottle, chugging whiskey while wading through freezing water, but dang it, we don't litter here. Was distracted by giant bouncing titties on a jogger, went off the side of the hill and rolled to the bottom into an electric fence. My grandfather and grandmother were walking along a street on their honeymoon, holding hands. He apparently gazed too long at some other lass and walked into a metal pole making a loud banging noise. I was around 9 or 10. Got home from school and instead of doing my homework I decided to fill up an empty wine bottle with gasoline my dad used for the lawnmower and light it on fire for science. Long story short, I lit the bottle on fire while it was still in my hands because I wanted to see, and burned off half my clothes, melted my shoes, ran out of them as soon as the bottle fell. No long lasting burns and didn't need to go to the hospital, although I think to this day what it would have been like for my parents to come home and see their son's charred corpse on the back patio. Was immediately put into an after school program and not allowed to go into the garage anymore, where we kept all the gasoline, sharp and motorized things. I also wasn't asked to cut the grass anymore, so that was a plus. That's a serious dedication to getting out of having to cut the lawn, son. I commend you. After arguing with my husband that I didn't want to waste money on a bath mat, and I slipped after a shower and knocked myself out for 45 minutes until my husband got home from work. Dumb kid. Just got first car, was getting off the highway and trying to make a left onto a bridge at a light that had just turned yellow. Ended up trying to make the turn at 40 miles per hour. Swerved almost all the way to the guardrail on one side. Swerved all the way across 4 lanes to the opposite guardrail. And finally recovered and got back into an appropriate lane while firmly holding the steering wheel in a dazed panic. and that's when I learned to slow the frick down when making turns. Holy frick. First of all, sorry for my not so good not my first language. Last weekend I got too drunk and went walking to another city not too far, about 23.5 km. It was dark and raining a lot. The roads here are really dark, in bad shape and are not illuminated during the night. I don't remember how I got in the road or why. I barely have any memories of that day. What I remember was that I suddenly found myself walking down the road. It was already night. I was on a party that occurred during the afternoon, and raining heavily. All I was capable of doing was to walk until I found a bus stop, so I could take a bus to my city. I was really lucky. I arrived at the bus stop just 5 minutes before the departure of the last bus of the day. I get chills of thinking in what could have happened to me during this journey. I could have easily been run over by a car or truck. The road was really dark and has lot of curves. Or I could have been attacked by someone. I also could have passed out since I was really drunk and have not eaten nothing since the breakfast. I know now some details of what happened thanks to Google localization history that tracked the GPS from the cell phone in my pocket that I did not try to use to call for help since I was too drunk and not thinking right. Also the rain was really heavy and would destroy the device, but still I have no memories of leaving the party or how I ended up in the middle of nowhere. No friends saw me leaving the party. PS. Brazilian, male, 25 overweight. Your English is better than half the people on Facebook and it's apparently their native language. When I was about 19 years old I worked at a resort and had to clean the tiles on the sides of the swimming pool every morning. It was hard work. The suntan lotion from the day before would create a film that was hard to scrub off. I got the bright idea to go into the pool pump room and mix up a batch of hydrochloric acid and chlorine together. Surely such a mixture would make this job easier. I remember seeing a puff of vapor rise from the bucket and immediately thereafter copious amounts of snot jetted out of my nose. My eyes were raining tears and the half breath I had taken in that instant sent me scrambling for the door. I burst out gasping for fresh air thinking that I was about to die. I never imagined the human body could create fluids and snot so fast and in so much quantities. TLDR. I unknowingly created mustard gas and nearly killed myself. Dodge car. Ride your bike really fast across the road when a car is coming. I was like 5 or 6. It was super dumb. No, it was not a really slow side road. Our youth. Nature's chlorine pool. Senior year of high school I went full retard in my chemistry class. We were seeing if we could purify water using different strategies. And to test if the water was pure we would put 2 electrodes in it that were plugged into the wall and connected to a light bulb. If the bulb lit up, it wasn't purified. Being the genius I am I thought I wonder if I can complete the circuit to turn on the light so I connected the 2 nodes with my finger and electrocuted the frick out of myself. Basically plugged myself into the wall with no resistance. I couldn't even pull my finger off. I had to slowly reach up with my other hand and grab my whole hand and yank it off. Got some burns on my finger and scared the crap out of my teacher. All in all I was okay though. Yesterday I was scratching my nose, sneezed, and punched myself so hard in the face that I got a nosebleed and bruising. Sledding on an inflatable woman. 'Twas college and Meat Frap was a ridiculous individual with exceptionally poor judgment. Meat Frap and his roommates decided to go drunken sledding in the middle of the night and grabbed whatever objects they had lying around that could serve as improvised sleds. This included trays that had been liberated from the dining hall, a Rubbermaid trash can lid, and Bridget, an inflatable companion originally purchased as a gag gift that had become the dorm room mascot. The snow on the hill had been soft during the day, and those sledding pioneers who had come before us had packed it all down and constructed a formidable jump, which by midnight had, along with the rest of the hill, frozen rock solid. Meat Frap climbed atop Bridget, whispered something sweet into her latex ear, and let gravity take over. Let it be known that an inflatable woman makes an extremely fast and surprisingly stable sled. As Meat Frap encountered the jump at an impressive speed, the curvature of his path required an equally impressive centripetal force. The magnitude of this force was Unfortunately, much more than Bridget's delicate Chinese vinyl seams could withstand. She loudly popped and rapidly deflated just as meat frap and a now limp Bridget left the lip of the jump and began a parabolic path like a Ruthian home run. Meat frap, knowing that his flaccid sledding partner would provide no cushioning whatsoever, attempted to maneuver into a position that might minimize the violence of the impending impact, but his efforts were futile. He landed kneecap first, exploding his patella into a multitude of fragments. A most unpleasant feeling. Tried fishing a toast that has slipped through out of the toaster. The toaster was running and I was using a fork. Guess an older or more simpler model would have toasted me. I did the same thing and shorted the house. Once ate half an oz of magic mushrooms and proceeded to have the most freaking intense mental breakdown in my life. I got stuck underneath a blanket for the better half of an hour cause I literally was so fricked up I just didn't understand where I was or what was happening. People always laugh, understandably, when I say that, but really it was kinda scary cause, like I said, I felt stuck and I was tripping hard. All I remember was that I had to make it stop, so I began devising ways to kill myself, since that was the only solution I came up with and I felt desperate. Once I escaped the blanket I headed toward the beach, fully expecting to just become one with nature and drown. This was on vacation, but my friends, also tripping but they only ate a couple grams, found me along the way and settled things down. Oh bruh. Rule 1. Have a babysitter at that dose. Rule 2. Don't forget you are on drugs. Glad you didn't do anything crazy. I remember last time I did a half OZ I had to keep telling myself gravity pulls things down, because the paint on the wall looked like it was sliding up. A couple friends and I went camping near Pena Spring in the desert. We walked to the springs, and kept going. We ended up at the edge of a canyon seeing another spring in the distance down the canyon. I tried to persuade my friends against it, citing we only had a couple bottles of water left and it's a desert. They left down the canyon with the last bottles of water. I drank 2 just on the way to the springs, so I followed. After climbing downhill for about an hour, they finally agreed to go back with a single bottle of water between us. It took about 2 hours to get back to the springs and I got heat exhaustion in the process. We went into Borrego Springs, got a few, more like 5, glasses of iced tea, and decided to cut our camping trip short and head home. We later found out the canyon is called Hellhole Canyon. Just a few off the top of my head. 1. Found a large, unused fire extinguisher and my friend threw it off a 7-story building while we all stood a few feet away at the bottom to watch. I am very glad the cylinder held up. 2. Jumped off a few buildings. Once onto an aircon unit of an adjoining building. Slipped, rolled and wound up with everything from my waist up hanging over a 60-foot drop. 3. Ran across a busy motorway, freeway, during rush hour during a 4-day bender in the woods. We'd been hiking after taking a bunch of weed shrooms and we saw a garage the other side. It was the only place in 20 miles that sold a Mars bar. How no one died I still don't know. 4. Nearly OD'd on sleeping pills a few times. 5. Swam into a busy shipping lane. I am not a strong swimmer. I no longer swim in the ocean. 6. At 4 years old my mum worked at a pool complex as a cleaner. I used to get free entry. I ran off from whoever was watching me and jumped in the deep end during what we call the super wave. Last wave machine of the day where they crank it up to full. I had to be resuscitated. I fell asleep driving on the highway. I had the luck that I was a little slow, but there was a curve and I opened my eyes right before the curve. My father was in the car and he didn't saw me sleeping. I was maybe between 12-14 and had a school assignment where I had to write a poem or something like that. I was always an overachiever so I decided to burn the outer part of the paper in order to make it seem older and more poetic-ish. I thought I was being Subaru original. Not really. Of course I started burning the margins of the paper in front of an open window and the paper became engulfed in fire. Since that wasn't stupid enough, instead of immediately throwing the paper on the ground, which was tile, and putting the fire out, I began to run panicking with it in my hand throughout the house. When it finally burned my hand I let it go in a carpet right next to a lot of wooden furniture and on wooden floor. I managed to put it out with a pan filled with water. I was usually a smart kid. Don't know what happened that day. Sorry for any typos. Not a native English speaker. I remember staining paper with a used tea bag to make it look old. Maybe try that next time. Drove home around 4 AM after a very long shift. I was far too tired to drive but went anyway. I remember pulling out of the parking lot. Then I blinked and I was almost halfway home with no memory of how I got there. I drove home very slowly the rest of the way. Don't drive tired, kids. When I was in high school I worked on my uncle's ranch. On one of the hottest days of the year we had a job digging a trench and it was miserable. The end of the day rolls around and somebody has to go move sprinkler pipes on one of the fields. My cousin and I volunteer jump at the opportunity. We decide to try to change the pipes as fast as possible so we can go swimming in the river until quitting time. We take quad bikes down to the field near the river. Four-wheelers often have limits on how fast they will go in reverse because turning a four-wheelers in reverse is pretty dangerous. This model I was driving had an override switch you could press to go in reverse very quickly. After shutting off the pipes to move them, I flip the four-wheeler in reverse and, while holding the override switch, attempt to turn going about 25 miles per hour in the middle of a field. The four-wheeler flips and a tire smacks my head and the four-wheeler ends up landing on me. I'm too out of it to move. But eventually my cousin finds me and lifts the four-wheeler and flips it off me. We did not go swimming. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.